Good morning and welcome to this special edition of KPRC 2 Plus Now. I'm Zach Lajway. Today is the day prosecutors for a third time will try to convict AJ Armstrong of murdering his parents while they were sleeping back in 2016. Fast forward today, AJ has a lot of support, including from people on social media using the hashtag #FreeAJ. We also know people are lined up outside the courtroom as we speak. And then, of course, you have his family. This right here is Grandma. You can see she is holding a pink blanket that she calls the veil of innocence. And she says it's up to the state to remove that. And always by his side is his wife. So we can see AJ has a lot of support from loved ones. We also know cameras are not allowed inside the courtroom. So through our exclusive coverage, a multi-platform experience, we're bringing you inside the courtroom. This.
Roll the open.
Good morning, everybody. We are live downtown. Joel, Letitia, Rilwan, reporter, criminal defense attorney to the stars, and reporter. That's the layout here, and it is a big day because the trial gets going in earnest today. We're expecting to hear opening statements in just a few hours. Is that right?
That's it.
Let's review just real quickly the jury. Jury selection ended on Thursday, right? They had everybody out of 200 some odd people that were on those panels. They've whittled it down to how many now?
16.
Yeah. 16. And I remember I caught this last week. You thought it was a little tilted in the defense's favor. Why is that?
I did. I did think that Rick did a really good job with Vordaer, and that's because, remember, we talked about what type of jurors we wanted on this jury, and remember, we talked about grandmothers. And so we have 3 grandmothers that are actually on this jury, and potentially even more. And so that's going to be heavily stacked for the defense, in my opinion. And remember, we saw that the grandmother is coming in with this pink blanket in full support of AJ.
That's the next thing on our rundown to talk about. What is the deal with the pink blanket? Explain that to me.
So defense attorney Rick DeToto brought it in during the whole voir dire process here to kind of say this is AJ's cloak of innocence, trying to present it to the prospective jurors like he's innocent until prosecutors can, without a reasonable doubt, say that he is guilty or the jury finds him guilty.
He literally referenced the pink blanket in that way?
He put him on. He used that pink blanket and put it around AJ during the process to kind of, as a visual note, to show the audience this is what it means. This is that cloak of protection, and he referenced it throughout the entire process.
Letitia, how does something like that play, though?
Perfectly. And
Really?
let me explain to you why. A lot of times, jurors forget that it is not the defendant's responsibility to prove themselves innocent. It is the state's job to prove that he is guilty. Ron, you made a statement. You said, until he's proven innocent, unless he's proven innocent. Do you see how that plays in your mind? It's like until. So it's going to happen. We're just waiting for it. No, it's unless he is proven guilty. And jurors forget that. They get back in that deliberation room and they're going to start saying just naturally, well, the defense didn't show us this, or they didn't do this, so he must be guilty. No, it's not that. He is innocent until that very high burden that we talked about last week is met.
Well, who's there then in the, I'm sorry to interrupt, but who's then there when they're deliberating to keep that fresh in their minds?
That pink blanket.
Really?
The pink blanket. And that's the whole purpose of it. I thought it was, marvelous. Now, granted, he's going up against some formidable opponents. John Jordan is very well known for his trial skills.
Do we have that crazy one that shows everybody?
Yeah. We will bring
that thing up there if we can.
So he's going up against some very formidable opponents. However, I think by bringing in that pink blanket, it will constantly remind the jurors he's innocent unless he's proven guilty. And then when you think about that pink blanket kind of gives him a cloak of innocence as well. Remember, he was only 16 years old at this time.
That's right.
He's 23 now, married,
a father.
And a father. And I think that the defense does not want the jurors to forget this kid was only 16 years old at the time this occurred.
Wait, so is he, just so I'm clear, is he literally going to wear the pink blanket?
No. During this whole process, one of his grandparents has had it on them, and we have a story up on our website now showing that the grandmother's clinching to it the entire time throughout this process. And as you mentioned, that's something I'm going to look out to see throughout this whole thing if she has it and she continues to bring it into the courtroom.
On Friday, we started to whittle through some motions, like I guess you call those pretrial motions. I don't know all the lingo, but what were some of the things that they got hashed out? I understand that DeToto had a practice of thanking the family before he, start to talk to people on the stand or did voir dire, and he's not going to be able to do that.
Correct. We're going to put in some pictures here so people at home understand who the players are at this point. As you mentioned, Rick DeToto, the lead defense on the team here on the right here. It was what he did during the second trial. He thanked Armstrong's family for being in attendance, and the judge said that's got to stop, including John Jordan. He also no longer can speak to the audience, is what the judge has determined. And for me, it made sense, correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe it would show the jury that his family or grandparents were behind AJ throughout this process.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it will show. And I think that the judge wants to streamline this and stick only to the evidence as opposed to playing on people's emotions. Remember, we talked about how deferential it's going to be for other grandmothers to look at another grandmother and say, this woman lost her child. I know this is her grandson, but she lost her child. And even notwithstanding that, she's standing behind this young man. That carries volume. So of course the defense wants to remind the jurors of that every chance that he gets. But the judge is saying, no, we're not going to play those mental games. Stay focused on the evidence and the evidence only.
Are you surprised by that ruling by the judge?
No, not at this point. I think that at this point, Judge Johnson wants this trial to be as streamlined with the evidence so that a verdict can be reached one way or the other.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what we might expect to see in opening statements. I can't remember, Anna, are we doing the 2022 sound bites comparison? No, she says no. Okay, so we have played that in the past. It's sort of their layout, and we get a feel of what everybody's keying on. I think for the prosecution, X marks the spot with that burglary alarm stuff. I mean, they're saying, look, the house was sealed, the burglary alarm never went off. Are we expecting to see same kind of deal this time around?
They have to do that because to me, that is their best piece of evidence is that the alarm never went off. And if the alarm never went off, nobody came and nobody left out of that house. And if you
with an asterisk there.
With an asterisk with the garage door.
The garage door, yeah.
And remember, they hinged upon that fact that there were only 4 people in that house, 2 of which are deceased. The other is a 10-year-old little girl and only leaves AJ Armstrong left. So you best believe that that is the roadmap that the prosecution is going to lay out for these jurors.
And another thing that happened pre-trial as well.
Real one, do you want to let's because I think it's useful to hear what they said in 2022. If you don't mind playing that real quickly, and that'll kind of give us a primer of what we can expect.
I don't see them going to sleep not knowing that their home is secure. So to me, the house is secure. So I don't see there's no physical damage. I'm sorry. You're good. Of intruders or the murder. The murder is still in the house. It was pretty obvious to me. And then I feel like the note was just a distraction to make you think it was from someone else.
Was there one piece of evidence that they were really hung up on, or was it just kind of a collection of different things?
Yes, they just kept going back to the alarm system and how there was a testimony on how it may have not been fully functioning. So that was their main focus on, like, how can we really rely on the alarm records if there was a testify that it wasn't really functioning fully. So that was their main focus.
Okay, that was a little portion of an interview that came from a juror, sort of saying, I guess, what resonates and what didn't work for her. Is that what you guys gathered?
Yeah.
The sound quality is kind of an issue. But so what? Break it down for us. What is she essentially saying there?
Basically saying that she didn't understood the whole alarm system issue. That one, the prosecutors are saying it works, but then the defense saying there's an issue with the garage door, which was referenced. And it sounds like that was a contention point inside the jury room after that second trial. And what the prosecutors are trying to do this time around, it's what happened last week. They're trying to bring in another person in to kind of act as a witness. This is the VP of alarm.com. They think that person can directly talk about the alarm system itself. Rick DeToto is saying, well, this is a new person. We haven't heard from this person yet. We don't have enough time to find someone to counter this. So they're kind of pushing against this. Prosecutors are saying this person's name has been in all court filings for a long time. This isn't a new player, but it will be a first time we're seeing them as a witness, and the judge has to determine exactly if she will allow that person in.
So I think more specifically to your point is that this person has always been listed as a lay witness, for lack of a better word, meaning that they're only going to present facts to the jury. Mm-hmm. However, now what the prosecution is saying, well, we actually talked to this person last week, and after speaking with this person, we've determined that this person is actually an expert. Now, there is a rule under Texas law that says if you're going to utilize an expert in trial, you must do so, but give the other side 20 days notice. 20 days notice, because the other side wants to vent this person. Mm-hmm. Have they ever testified before? Have they testified for the prosecution only? Have they testified for the defense only? Have they ever been caught telling untruths on the stand?
You got to study them.
You have to study them. Yeah, of course. So to spring this on us at the last minute is unfair, and it's unduly surprise to the defense. And so that was the whole contention last week. But remember, the judge says, well, we'll wait until the time is right to see what his testimony will be, and then I'll make my ruling at that time.
Really?
Yes.
So how does that, is that common?
It is common.
Is it?
It is common, because what the judge is going to want to do is really take a look at just how prejudicial that this person's testimony will be. And if it's extremely prejudicial, then at that point, that's when the judge is going to, or should say, nope, you should have given them notice that this person was going to be an expert.
Now to a lay person, why does it make a difference how they're classified?
Well, because jurors are going to believe experts more so than just a layperson. If you are an expert in your field, then I should believe what you say, because you've had years of studying this, years of doing this, and so you're coming from a higher level of authority than just, say, a layperson who would come in and just testify about facts.
So is this John Jordan's strategy, or?
No. John Jordan is not one to be known for playing those types of tricks. I think it was just a situation. One thing about trial, it is very fluid, very unpredictable. And so I think what happened is they sat down, they interviewed this guy, they realized how valuable he would be as an expert, and so they have to try. Whether they're given permission to utilize him as an expert or not, they have to at least make the effort. So I think it was just a game time decision that they made, and the judge will make the final determination.
And I'll tell you, the supporters behind AJ Armstrong last week, we can report this, that they put a donation seeking money for this possible expert to counter this VP of alarm.com that will come in. It was quickly made on an Instagram post that supporters are running, seeking some funding, I think up to $10,000, but it was quickly removed off the Instagram page for whatever reason. But that is something supporters, at least, not sure if it's a defense, trying to raise money for, to find someone to counter.
And that makes sense, because if you do have an expert, I always have my own expert to counteract the state's expert.
That's what I'm saying. Wasn't Rick already, or Mr. DeToto already prepared with somebody to counter whatever they're going to come up with?
Well, not if he didn't know that this guy was going to testify as an expert. He didn't know that. He thought that the guy was just going to come in and talk about facts. Now the guy is going to give his expert opinion. So I need my expert to counter his expert opinion. But I didn't know that. So you're telling me this at the last minute, and it's on the eve of trial. I don't have time to look for experts. I'm getting ready for opening statements. I'm getting ready for those first witnesses. My schedule is mapped out, and now I have to stop find an expert, interview an expert, retain the expert, and then have the expert review all the records from their expert, that's kind of unfair at the last minute.
And so the judge is dealing with all of it how? Just deferring the answer on it, right?
Deferring the answer, and remember what DeToto said was that the proper regimen for that could be a motion for continuance, meaning that the way we can cure this problem is just give us a continuance, and the judge is not going to do that.
She has been sort of staunchly opposed to that on lots of issues. She
Absolutely,
wants to keep this thing
yes.
on the rails. Okay, so you're going to go upstairs soon, I guess, right? Are we expecting, I mean, first of all, here's the one thing I wanted to hit, just to have an understanding, and we always do this, and I made this mistake. We say opening statements, closing argument.
Correct.
Is there a true difference in what's happening between a statement and an argument?
Absolutely, there is. A statement, you are only to talk about what the facts will show. So you will hear throughout both of their opening statements that they will preface all the facts with, the facts will show. The facts will show. You know, the evidence will show, because they can only talk about facts in terms of what the evidence will show. They cannot give their opinion about what those facts are.
This is a rule.
This is a rule. They cannot argue how meaningful they believe the facts are. Only what they believe the evidence will show, which is in direct contrast to closing arguments, because in closing arguments, the gates are left wide open, and you can come in and argue whatever you want, how you want, based on the evidence that was presented.
I understand we do have that 2022 opening statement from John Jordan. We're going to give that a listen real quick, kind of give us context of what we might expect to hear later this morning from this same set.
On July 28, 2016, Antonio Armstrong Jr. and his wife Dawn went to bed in their Southwest Houston home. When they went to bed that night, the doors and the windows were locked and the alarm system was on. In the Armstrong household were 4 people: Antonio Sr., Dawn, their daughter, 12-year-old Kayra Armstrong, and the defendant, then 16-year-old Antonio Armstrong Jr. When Antonio Sr. and Dawn went to bed that night, you will hear evidence that they were shot in the head. And while this happened, the alarm was on, the doors and the windows were still locked. You're going to hear that Dawn Armstrong was shot twice in the side of her head, and she died instantly. Antonio Armstrong Sr. was shot once in his head, and as he lay there next to his wife, he struggled to breathe. He was unconscious. Paramedics arrived. They rushed him to a hospital to try and save his life, but he died the next day. Before these two were ever complainants in a capital murder indictment, the Armstrongs seemingly had it all. Antonio Armstrong Sr. was an All-American linebacker at Texas A&M. He went on to play professional football for the Miami Dolphins. He married the love of his life, Dawn. You're going to hear that Dawn was a strong woman who cared about her children fiercely. But she also wasn't afraid to put her foot down when she needed to be the disciplinarian between the two. You're going to hear that that night, the doors and the windows were locked, the alarm was on, and those doors were never breached until the police arrived at that scene.
Okay, obviously that's Ryan Trask, a member of the DA's office, working with John Jordan. Well, one question before we talk about shifts in strategy. How do you pick who's the person that's going to give because you'd think it'd be your lead guy, wouldn't it? Or
No.
No?
Remember, let's talk about track and field, right? Who runs the anchor?
The fastest.
The fastest guy. Same thing. You want the lead guy, your best guy, to be the last person that jury hears. So that's why you have John Jordan in the back. Like I stated before, he has an impeccable trial reputation of being very effective. Very effective.
Now let's talk about now. I think we talked about the the defense's possible shifting strategy, although we didn't really identify it. And all of this is speculation.
Yeah.
We're going to see all this. But is it going to be the same thing around? Are we going to hear a carbon copy of that? Does time play a role in how they have to shift things or position things?
Sure. I think more so what plays a role is the fact that there has been 2 prior hung juries. So my mentor always taught me, anytime your client leaves that courtroom with you, that's a not guilty. Okay? So in essence, if you take that same thought process, every time AJ Armstrong left that courtroom, it was a not guilty. Because remember, the prosecution, what they want to do is convict him and send him to prison. So the last 2 times he's left that courtroom, in essence, those are 2 not guilties.
Can they bring that up?
No, of course not. No, they can't bring that up.
They can't mention the 2 hung jurors.
No,
either.
they cannot. No, cannot do it. It's only focused on what's before them. Although you would almost have to be living under a rock, right, not to know that there's been 2 hung jurors. And that's why they were so meticulous about picking these juries, to make sure that they would be fair and impartial.
I actually talked to a potential juror last Friday. He had been struck. He reached out. I talked to the guy. He thought it was a fascinating process. And actually, he had been a juror on a murder trial before, which I thought was completely crazy. But he said he had no idea there had been 2 hung. You know, he kind of heard, he knew AJ in the back of his mind, you know, like a news item you've kind of heard something about, but he had no idea there had been 2 hung juries.
Wow, that's impressive.
So do you think the jurors up there do know there have been 2 hung juries?
I think maybe a few of them have.
A few have mentioned
Sure.
saying they heard something about prior trials before, but nothing conclusive to saying they heard that there's been 2 hung juries. They've
Do
heard
they
something.
share that with each other, though?
No, they're not supposed to talk about anything outside of what they hear or see throughout the trial. Now that's what they're supposed to do. So what happens in that jury deliberation room, no one really knows but those jurors.
Quickly, I know we don't have the defense's opening statement just because of glitchy issues, but I know last time their opening statement was really just showing an alternative, what's the term, like someone else, an alternative perpetrator. And that's when they're really leaning in on AJ's brother, older brother, Josh Armstrong, saying that he may be the person to look at. And then Rick DeToto kind of talking about the HPD's investigation, saying there were a lot of flaws into it, saying there's a lot of issues. So that's what I'll be listening for today as well.
Whatever happened to the issue of the burglary at Dad's gym? Is that video, did that get in? Is that not being
That's
played?
something else Judge Johnson has to look into. They brought in, which is actually AJ's aunt, who worked at the gym at the time and kind of could authenticate the security camera itself, saying, yes, this is how it works, this is what was happening at that time. So we're unsure if it's going to play at all during this whole trial.
I think that it should.
Should?
I think that it should, because the defense has a right to put on whatever alternative theories that they believe could have happened other than the defendant. So other than AJ Armstrong, who could have committed this murder? And so they have a right to put that on as long as there is evidence to suggest the theory. Where here you have someone who actually says, here is a video of someone burglarizing the gym that the unknown person that the Armstrongs owned. So it could have been someone targeting them for many reasons. And so I think that, just like the brother, is an alternative theory that should be explored.
Do you have to, if you're the defense, propose an alternate killer? Is that something you have to do? Like, it's not, does that just sit better if you're a juror? It's like, okay, that's plausible. It could be somebody else. Do you have to propose somebody else did it?
See, Joel, you're going right back to what we talked about, that cloak of innocence. The defense does not have to do anything. And what I tell my potential jurors is, I could sit here and play dominoes if I want to, or play solitaire. I don't have to do anything. That is the law.
Yeah.
They have to prove it. They have to bring you evidence. So to answer your question, no, the defense does not have to do that. But of course, any good defense attorney is going to do something. So you should do it, but you don't have to do it.
Because you should do it. Why? So that people can kind of flesh out in their heads, okay, they could have gone down like this. They need that sort of alternate theory. I know the cloak of innocence thing. I get that.
You do it to create reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Because if you get reasonable doubt, it's a not guilty. And remember, a defense's job, of course, is not to prove anything. We don't have to prove that he was innocent. All we have to show is that he was not guilty, meaning that there was reasonable doubt as to whether or not he was the one who committed these murders. And how I sum it up always in the end is, if you have a doubt and that doubt is reasonable, then it's a not guilty verdict.
Got it. Okay, what's the schedule of events today, Real One? So she's also, Judge Kelly Johnson is also keeping like her docket going, right?
She is. So that's why it's starting today at 10:30-ish, because she wants to clear some of her dockets. And then both sides are allowed up to 45 minutes for opening statements. There will be a brief lunch in there where she continues to take some of her docket. And I believe there's a hard out at 2:45 this afternoon when things have to be wrapped up. So what people have to remember is, through all of this, Judge Johnson continues to hear other cases, just other pretrial things, because they've got a backlog of dockets and cases here. So Judge Johnson's also working with that.
I mean, with you got such a huge trial and she's got to still take care of the daily business, is that always the case?
Always the case. Always the case. She cannot think about it with the backlog that we have in Harris County now, partially due to Harvey, and then after Harvey, the pandemic. So the case backlog is insurmountable. So we cannot shut down an entire court for 1 month for one trial when there are thousands of cases that are on the docket. So the court is always going to run regular business and, of course, work the trial in throughout the day as well. The trial will take precedence. However, the rest of the court business will happen as well.
You have to keep it going.
Have to keep it going.
What about, you said 45 minutes? That seems, I never thought it would be that long. Is that typical to go that long?
That's actually short for a case like this.
Really?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. I thought maybe she would give them an hour and a half, something of that nature. For a case like this, that's pretty short. I've been given 2 hours before on big cases.
And you really, you just wax for 2 hours? You're up there and you just, wow.
Absolutely. And
that must take skill.
When there is a voluminous amount of evidence to present, you want to lay out the roadmap so that the jurors will remember that roadmap as you go through the trial. And then in closing argument, you remind them of what you told them in opening statement. And what's very, very tricky that lawyers have to remember, you don't want to promise something in opening statement that you don't deliver, because the other side in closing argument will say, you remember when Attorney X told you that he would present this?
Yeah.
He didn't do that. And so now he hasn't been truthful with you. Where is that evidence? See, these are all the things that you get to say in closing argument that you wouldn't be able to say in opening statements.
That's very interesting. Okay, so do we expect, and this is all kind of guesswork, but do we expect that it's going to be Trask who delivers the opening statement?
I would think so.
Well, DeToto does it himself for his.
And DeToto opens and closes.
Yep. Oh,
He's
that's
the
just
lead
his
attorney.
style?
Yes, that's
the way
his
he does
style.
it.
We saw the family head into the courthouse.
So it sounds like we just saw the family heading in the courthouse.
Oh, yeah?
You can see clips of that right there as they're walking in. I'm trying to see who is there in attendance, but I'm sure it will be AJ's wife, Kate, his three grandparents, that is. That's AJ there in the light blue, gray suits, and his wife. They are holding hands. And in the back there, I see two grandparents, and it looks like a group of possible supporters, which they had been calling for supporters leading up to today to join them in attendance. So AJ Armstrong walking into court. He has to be at court at 9:30 when the docket opens, along with all the other people who have other cases that Judge Johnson has to listen to today. So that's why he is here so early, because he is required to be up there by 9:30.
Excellent play-by-play. Quick question, a sidebar item. Letitia, do you tell your clients what to wear to court? Do you direct that, or do you say, is there a certain color? I'm just curious.
Not necessarily a color, but I certainly remind them of the importance and the respect of the courtroom. I think that this is a process that needs to be respected, and I believe that the defendant should respect that process and dress accordingly. So yes, I do tell them, wear a suit jacket. You not necessarily have to wear a tie, but you should wear a tie if you can. But you don't have to wear a tie, but you certainly should wear a suit to respect the importance of the process.
Makes sense.
And he's been wearing a suit all through the entire
He has, every single time. All right, we got about a 1 minute, but she's kind of waffling on the 1 minute, so it might be longer or shorter. As we get ready to wrap it up, the things to keep in mind are, to me, I think what's going to be fascinating today is to see how different opening statements are from like last time. Like, what's going to be different? Or is it just going to be the exact same thing?
That's what I'm keying on to as well.
Yeah.
I have a transcript of both sides' opening statements. I'll be marking through it the entire time to see what is new and what is verbatim from the last trial.
It's so cool. I mean, not cool. I mean, that's the wrong word to use, but it's just so interesting, I think, to see, and the perspective you give, just all the inner workings of everything that goes on behind the scenes. I think it's fascinating. We're going to have a full day of coverage, but for now, we're going to send it back to you guys. Like Zach in the studio, is that it?
Yeah, very fascinating, Joel.